The Florida retirement industry has spent decades pointing you toward the same 6 or 7 cities: Naples, Sarasota, the Villages, Fort Lauderdale, until you'd think that's all the state has to offer. It isn't. There are 13 more towns where your neighbors still wave from the porch, your insurance bill doesn't require a second job, and nobody's ever handed you an HOA fine for the wrong shade of beige. I spent weeks driving the back roads between Tallahassee and the Gulf, roads that never make it into a retirement magazine, and found a small North Florida town where an entire generation became overnight millionaires off a soda company. A fishing village whose police department once ran out of a repurposed phone booth. A prehistoric spring where retirees dive for fossilized shark teeth on an ordinary Tuesday. And an oak-canopied antique town older than the state of Florida itself. If any of that sounds more interesting than a Clubhouse newsletter and a $150 HOA fee, hit subscribe. Because we're counting down 13 Florida towns the retirement industry never puts in a brochure. Number 13, Waukla. I drove into Waukla expecting a strip mall and found a courthouse square instead, cattle trailers parked outside a diner, and a Peace River that cuts through town so quietly most visitors miss it entirely. Waukla is the seat of Hardee County, deep in Florida's agricultural heartland, about an hour east of Sarasota and a world away from it. This is cattle and citrus country, the kind of Florida that existed before theme parks, and it shows in the prices. The median home value sits around $136,500, among the lowest on this list, with monthly housing cost close to $930. There's no beach, no boardwalk, no golf resort. What there is a river full of fossilized shark teeth for anyone willing to wade in with a sieve, and a pace of life that doesn't apologize for itself. For a retiree who wants a fixed income to actually stretch, Wauchula might be the cheapest legitimate option on this list. Number 12, Madison. Main Street in Madison at 9 in the morning is almost eerily quiet. One diner open, coffee under $2, and a town square that looks preserved specifically to make you feel like prices stopped rising in 1998. Madison sits in Madison County, closer to Valdosta, Georgia than to any Florida beach, with the Suwannee River running nearby. The median home value runs somewhere between $66,000 and $80,000, which is not a typo. Genuinely one of the cheapest housing markets left in the state. Living costs run about 3% below the national average, with housing 22% below it. Florida charges no state income tax and no tax on pensions or Social Security. And in a town like Madison, that combination turns a modest fixed income into something that actually covers a life. It's not flashy. It's not trying to be. Number 11, Perry. I pulled over on the outskirts of Perry because I smelled wood smoke, except it was the pulp mill. And a local at a gas station told me with a straight face that around here they call that the smell of money. Perry sits in Taylor County in Florida's Big Bend region, timber country through and through, proud enough of it to call itself the tree capital of the South, with an actual forest capital museum to prove it. The median home value runs $150,000 to $157,000, and living costs sit well below both the national and Florida averages. It's surrounded by blackwater rivers and pine forest as far as you can see. It's not marketed as a retirement town, which is exactly why the prices haven't caught up yet. Number 10, Avon Park. Avon Park calls itself the City on the Hills, which sounds like a stretch until you're driving through it and realize Highlands County has real elevation. And Avon Park sits on top of some of it, overlooking Lake Verona. It's the quieter Twin City to Sebring, same lake country setting, half the name recognition. The median home value runs from $150,000 to $209,000 depending on the source, and the cost of living index sits around 82, about 17% cheaper than the national average, with housing 46% below it. Advent Health operates a full medical center right in town, so no hour-long drive for a routine checkup. Retirees from the Northeast and Midwest keep landing here for the same reason. A lake town with real healthcare at a price coastal Florida would laugh at. Number 9, Port St. Joe. I walked into a small museum on a quiet street in Port St. Joe and realized I was standing exactly where Florida's first constitution was written, in 1838. Not something you expect to stumble into on a Tuesday afternoon. Port St. Joe sits in Gulf County on the Forgotten Coast, right on St. Joseph Bay, quietly becoming one of the state's most under-the-radar retirement spots. The median home value runs $232,000 to $250,000, with living costs about 4% below the national average and 12% below the Florida average. Scalloping season turns the bay into a local event every summer, and Cape San Blas, one of the prettiest stretches of undeveloped beach in Florida, sits down the road without the crowds. The median age here is 47, which tells you the retirees already found this one. If you're enjoying this list, now's a good time to hit subscribe, because I cover towns exactly like these every week, and the next 4 entries get stranger the further we go. Number 8, Carabel. I pointed my camera at what looked like an ordinary phone booth on Highway 98, and a local walking by laughed and said, "That's our whole police department." He wasn't joking. Carabel, a fishing village in Franklin County on the Forgotten Coast, is home to the officially recognized world's smallest police station, a phone booth pressed into service in 1963 after the town got tired of tourists racking up long-distance charges on the police line. The median home value runs $240,000 to $333,000, still reasonable for direct Gulf access. Beyond the phone booth, there's the Crooked River Lighthouse, a ferry to the nearly untouched Dog Island, and a working waterfront nobody's dressed up for tourists. For about 2,600 people, this town has an outsized personality. Number 7, Monticello. I drove past a Greek Revival courthouse with a full dome in a town this size and genuinely thought I'd taken a wrong turn into Georgia. Monticello, the seat of Jefferson County, sits in Florida's Red Hills region about 30 minutes east of Tallahassee, rolling terrain that looks nothing like the flat Florida of postcards. This town has hosted a watermelon festival every year since 1949, and the John Denham House downtown has a reputation as one of the most haunted hotels in Florida, which the staff will happily tell you about over breakfast. The median home value sits around $211,000, and close to 30% of residents are already 65 or older. There's no hospital in town, but 3 sit within a 30-minute drive, with life flight access for anything urgent. It's antebellum charm without the usual price tag. Number 6, Williston. Watching a retiree in full snorkel gear climb out of a spring-fed sinkhole clutching a fossilized shark tooth the size of a golf ball is not something you plan for, but that's an average Tuesday at Devil's Den outside Williston. Williston sits in Levy County, horse country, close enough to Ocala to borrow its amenities without the Ocala prices. Devil's Den is a prehistoric spring inside a collapsed cave, crystal clear, constant 72 degrees, one of the strangest and most beautiful natural attractions in the state. The median home value runs $253,000 to $279,000, and the town's population sits under 4,000. It's the kind of place where your hobby can be diving for 10-million-year-old megalodon teeth instead of mini-golf. Number 5, High Springs. Every third storefront on the main strip in High Springs either sells antiques or rents out inner tubes, sometimes both. And that tells you everything about the pace of life here. High Springs sits in Alachua County along the Santa Fe River, minutes from Ginny Springs and Poe Springs, water so clear it looks photoshopped. Locals call it the antique capital of North Florida, and the spring diving and tubing outside downtown are things people drive hours for that residents do before lunch. The median home value ranges $202,000 to $274,000, and living costs sit just slightly below the national average. Housing runs a bit higher than nearby towns, but for river access and a walkable downtown, retirees seem to think it's worth it. Number 4, Arcadia. Arcadia has hosted the All-Florida Championship Rodeo every March since 1929, one of the longest continuously running rodeos in the country. And for one weekend, this quiet DeSoto County town fills up with cowboys, campers, and enthusiasm you wouldn't expect from a town of 8,000. The rest of the year, Arcadia settles into a historic downtown rebuilt, almost entirely of brick, after a pair of fires in the 1900s, which today just means a genuinely handsome antique district. The median home price runs $238,000 to $252,000, reasonable for Southwest Florida's inland side. The Peace River runs past town, and locals wade in with sieves hunting fossilized shark teeth the way people elsewhere hunt seashells. It's agricultural, unpretentious, and quietly becoming one of the region's best-kept retirement secrets. If you've made it this far, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people trying to figure out where to retire without going broke. Top 3, let's finish this. Number 3, Steinhatchee. I watched grown adults in wetsuits wade out of the river clutching mesh bags like they'd struck gold, and in a way they had. Steinhatchee sits on the Big Bend Saltwater Trail where Taylor and Dixie counties meet, a fishing village of about 756 people that turns into a scalloping madhouse every summer when thousands of visitors descend on a town that small. But the year-round population tells the real story. 47% of residents are 65 or older, median age 63, which makes Steinhatchee less a retirement destination and more an actual retirement town, organized around fishing docks, boat ramps, and a pace of life that doesn't budge for anyone. The median home value runs $255,000 to $296,000. No traffic, barely a chain restaurant, and a sense that everyone here already made the decision this list is trying to talk you into. Number 2. Macanopy. I drove into Macanopy under a canopy of live oaks, so thick the road went dark in the afternoon, past antique shops that looked like they hadn't changed a window display since the Carter administration, and realized I'd found the oldest inland town in Florida, settled in 1821, before the state existed. Macanopy sits in Alachua County, 12 miles south of Gainesville, the kind of town that occasionally gets discovered. It was the filming location for 1991's Doc Hollywood, and it sits next to Cross Creek, where author Marjorie Canaan Rawlings wrote The Yearling. The median home value runs around $233,000, living costs about 9% below the national average, median age 49.3, meaning half the town already thinks like a retiree. UF Health Shands, one of the best hospital systems in the state, is 20 minutes away in Gainesville. Wandering the porch of a used bookstore here, I forgot what day of the week it was. Number 1. Quincy. In the 1920s and 30s, a Quincy banker named Pat Monroe became convinced a small Atlanta soda company was going to be worth something someday. So he told every depositor, neighbor, and farmer who walked into his bank to buy Coca-Cola stock and never, under any circumstances, sell it. They listened. By the time that stock finished splitting, this tiny Gadsden County town had produced as many as 67 millionaires. And today, Quincy is still known, proudly, as the town of Coca-Cola millionaires. That history is written across downtown. Victorian and Greek Revival mansions built with soda money still line the streets, grander than anything you'd expect from a town this size. Quincy sits 20 minutes west of Tallahassee. Rolling hills, old shade tobacco farms turned quiet residential streets. And here's what makes it number 1. Despite all that money and history, the median home value in Quincy sits around $150,000. A town that produced dozens of millionaires by refusing to sell a stock is now one of the most affordable places in North Florida to live in one of the houses that money built. These 13 towns don't have PR firms. They're not the ones getting pushed in retirement magazine ads or sponsored listicles. But everyone offers something the well-known Florida retirement cities lost a long time ago. Affordability, a real sense of place, and neighbors who still know your name. If this helped you rethink where to retire in Florida, subscribe. I put out videos like this every week covering the small towns and the real estate math the industry doesn't print in a brochure. I'll see you in the next one.